When you land at Taiwan's Taoyuan International Airport, the message is impossible to miss. Overhead speakers repeat it in multiple languages. No pork, no sausages, no meat snacks. Even the arrival hall signs warn that bringing in pork products could cost you up to 1 million NT dollars in fines. That's more than 30,000 US dollars. Quarantine beagles weave their way through luggage belts, sniffing for the faintest trace of this forbidden meat. Even the pork that was in your airplane meal cannot be brought into Taiwan. For years, Taiwan has enforced some of the strictest airport food regulations in the world, and there's a very good reason for that. The island was one of the few places in Asia that had managed to stay free of African swine fever, or ASF, a devastating viral disease that kills nearly every pig it infects. The government's relentless border checks and massive fines weren't just about bureaucracy. They were a desperate shield against a virus that has wiped out herds and economies across Asia. Until recently, those efforts were paying off. In May 2025, the World Organization for Animal Health, WOAH, officially recognized Taiwan as free of 3 major swine diseases: African swine fever, classical swine fever, and foot and mouth disease, according to Taiwan Today. The announcement was a milestone, reflecting years of tight control on imports, routine inspections, and strict management of food waste used for pig feed. Officials had reason to be proud. Between 2018 and 2024, as the African swine fever tore through farms from China to Vietnam, Taiwan's vigilance stood out. Every package of confiscated sausage or ham at the airport was a potential threat. And in fact, laboratory testing later revealed that about 9% of pork products seized at ports or airports carried traces of the ASF, African swine fever virus, according to the Cabinet's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Agency. That success made what happened next even more alarming. In late October 2025, the unthinkable happened. Authorities confirmed Taiwan's first ever case of African swine fever on a pig farm in Taichung's Wuqi district, a coastal area in central Taiwan. As AP News and Focus Taiwan reported, 195 pigs were culled, that means killed, and a 3-kilometer control zone was immediately established. The Ministry of Agriculture also imposed a nationwide 5-day ban on the transport and slaughter of pigs. Investigators say the farm had reported unusually high pig deaths earlier that month, more than 100 animals in just 10 days. Lab tests on the carcasses returned positive for the ASF virus on October 21st, confirming what many in Taiwan's agricultural sector had long feared. According to phys.org, that single confirmation meant Taiwan's hard-won ASF-free status was gone, and it would take at least 3 months of clean testing with no new cases to regain it. But how did a virus that Taiwan had kept out for years finally breach its defenses? African swine fever is one of the deadliest viral diseases in the animal kingdom. It doesn't harm humans, so no, you cannot catch it from eating pork, but for pigs, it's nearly always fatal. The World Organization for Animal Health describes it as a highly contagious viral disease of domestic and wild pigs, caused by a DNA virus in the Asfarviridae family. Symptoms start subtly: fever, loss of appetite, lethargy, but soon escalate into internal bleeding, darkened skin, and sudden death. There is no effective vaccine available for most countries, meaning the only way to stop its spread is to kill infected herds and impose strict quarantines. The virus originated in sub-Saharan Africa, where it circulates naturally among wild pigs and ticks. But since the mid-20th century, it has jumped continents, reaching Europe, in the 1950s, Russia in the 2000s, and then in 2018, China, where it spread with devastating speed. From there, it moved across Southeast Asia to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, the Philippines, and South Korea. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization now lists more than 60 countries that have reported ASF outbreaks in the past few years. So, what or who is responsible for spreading African swine fever? That question is both scientific and political. One clear factor is human behavior. The virus can survive for months in frozen or processed pork, meaning something as small as a sausage or even a dumpling can carry it across borders. Taiwan's quarantine officers have detected ASF, African swine fever, viral DNA in pork products carried by travelers from abroad, a discovery first published by Taiwan's Council of Agriculture in 2019 in the Journal of Veterinary Science. Again, at one point, these products carried in by travelers from abroad tested at about 9%. 9% of those products contained the viral DNA. Some experts and local media have gone further, suggesting that China's ASF crisis may be indirectly or even deliberately linked to the spread of the virus through contaminated products sent abroad and to Taiwan. The FAO has stated that in 2018, the movement of pig products rather than live pigs likely caused the spread of the virus throughout China and into neighboring countries. However, while speculation persists, no conclusive evidence links the current outbreak in Taiwan directly to China or to any sort of deliberate contamination. Still, given the geographical proximity and large volume of smuggled or undeclared pork products entering Taiwan from China, officials are not ruling anything out. Late October, the government announced in Taiwan that it is reviewing how to regulate Chinese e-commerce platforms such as Taobao and Pinduoduo, following concerns that imported products sold through the cross-border online channels may have contributed to the recent outbreak of African swine fever, ASF, in Taichung. To understand how African swine fever might have entered Taiwan, we have to look at how pigs are fed here. Unlike in many Western countries, a portion of Taiwan's pig industry relies on recycled kitchen waste, which is leftover food collected from restaurants, schools, and even households. The idea is eco-friendly, it reduces waste and saves money. Western pig farmers, on the other hand, typically feed pigs with a diet primarily consisting of cereal grains like corn and sorghum, supplemented with soybean meal and other protein sources. While Taiwan's method may be more eco-friendly, however, it also creates a potential biosecurity nightmare. If any of that waste contains contaminated pork from imported sausages, dumplings, or processed meat, and if it isn't cooked to a high enough temperature, the virus can survive and infect the pigs that eat it. In Taichung's outbreak, Taipei Times reported that the farm in question had failed to upload a required video and photographic proof that it was properly cooking the food waste before feeding it to the pigs, a violation of Taiwan's agricultural regulations. Officials also noted gaps in inspections over the past few months. Following the outbreak, the Ministry of Agriculture imposed a temporary ban on using kitchen waste as pig feed and warned that violations could result in fines of up to 3 million NT dollars, according to Taiwan News. Investigators are now tracing the waste collection routes and feed supply chains to determine if the virus entered through improperly sterilized food scraps. In the aftermath, the Taichung City Government and Central Ministry of Agriculture have been under intense scrutiny. The farm's earlier infractions and the city's failure to enforce stricter oversight have raised uncomfortable questions about whether this outbreak could have been prevented. So far, officials say testing of nearby farms has come back negative, according to National Hog Farmer, but containment efforts continue. disinfecting vehicles, restricting movement, and monitoring pig farms within a 3-kilometer radius. The investigation remains open, and multiple scenarios are still being examined, from contaminated kitchen waste to smuggled pork products to lapses in biosecurity. Even with all of these controls, Taiwan's agriculture sector now faces months of uncertainty. The island's 6 million pigs are the backbone of its domestic meat industry, and a wider outbreak could cause severe economic losses, not to mention threaten public confidence in Taiwan's food safety system. In the wake of Taiwan's first confirmed African swine fever case in mid-October 2025, the information environment around the outbreak quickly became muddled. False or misleading claims began circulating online and in social media. Many of these asserted that pork from local farms was unsafe to eat, that the government was covering up human infections, or that the virus had already spread widely and the authorities were concealing it. For example, Taiwan Fact Check Center had documented that disinformation flows in Taiwan are increasingly sophisticated, driven by AI-generated videos and amplified across multiple networks. One earlier instance, even before this outbreak in January 2019, a Facebook post claimed that the ASF had been found in Taiyuan, prompting an official response from the Council of Agriculture, warning the public not to believe or share rumors and noting that misleading info was already affecting domestic pork sales. Following the confirmed outbreak in Taichung recently this year, though, the government has responded on several fronts. The Taiwan Food and Drug Administration issued a public statement emphasizing that African swine fever cannot infect humans, and that pork is safe when properly inspected and cooked. In addition, the government reminded citizens via deport offices and customs bulletins that bringing in pork products from African swine fever affected areas can trigger fines of up to 1 million NT dollars. Authorities are also warning of this maximum 1 million NT dollar fine for spreading false information or misinformation about African swine fever in Taiwan, suggesting that they are treating this issue, the misinformation issue, as a biosecurity risk, not just a communication problem. Many consumers in Taiwan have expressed anxiety that they have been avoiding pork and looking for alternative meats. Others have questioned the thoroughness of inspections. Vendors and market operators reported encountering customers who asked pointed questions about whether the pork is safe or how far from Taichung the virus might have already spread. Meanwhile, some local social media posts and message chains blamed the outbreak on smuggled Chinese pork or government negligence, both of which at this point are just rumors, as the actual cause and source of the virus has yet to be confirmed. The spread of false or exaggerated information regarding the African swine fever outbreak in Taiwan has intersected with real-world economic and agricultural impacts, though. The government's dual response pattern, which includes reinforcing factual messages that pork is safe and that the virus cannot infect humans, and imposing stricter penalties for misinformation and illegal meat imports, may very well suggest that biosecurity and information security are now deeply intertwined. While the most consumed meat by Taiwanese people is poultry, with an average consumption of 43.12 kilograms per person in 2022, according to Taiwan News, pork was not far behind at 36 kilograms per person that year. The confirmation of African swine fever in Taiwan and the emergency control measures that followed rapidly brought significant disruptions to the pork sector, from farm level through morning market stalls. One of the earliest visible effects was the closure of many pork selling stalls in traditional markets. A Taipei Times report from October 30th labeled the situation pork pause, most stalls selling freshly slaughtered pork in traditional markets have temporarily closed, citing the nationwide ban on pig transport and slaughtering. For example, in large morning markets in Kaohsiung, pork vendors reported shutting up for days because they could not procure freshly slaughtered animals under the government-imposed ban. To help, several local governments announced a waiver of stall rental fees for 1 month for affected vendors. On the farm production side, Taiwan produced about 808,000 tons of pork last year, accounting for about 90% of domestic demand, according to the Ministry of Agriculture, data cited in various news reports. The slaughter ban and restricted transport therefore had the potential to disrupt this major supply chain. Indeed, one editorial in the Taipei Times described the situation as the pork crisis and warned that although no new cases were found in the first round of inspections, the high death rate of ASF in pigs meant that supply and price risks were real. On retail level sales, supermarkets and hypermarkets publicly reassured consumers that their pork comes from contract farms, certified slaughterhouses, and traceable sources. For example, chains like PX Mart and Carrefour stated that their pork stocks meet animal health and inspection standards and pledged stable supply despite the ban. These efforts sought to reassure customers and contain consumer panic, but anecdotal reports suggest consumer behavior still shifted. Many shoppers avoided fresh pork for a time, opting for frozen pork or other proteins. One story quoted a market vendor association president lamenting having been unable to open her stall due to a lack of supply and insufficient customers. Beyond anecdotes, though, the statistics already reflect structural stress. From 2022 to 2023, there was about an increase of 10% in the average auction price for pigs traded in the pork market, already suggesting tighter supply before ASF. With ASF now confirmed, the risk of further price increases, supply bottlenecks, or farm exits becomes more acute. In practical terms, small butchers at local markets are especially vulnerable. When fresh slaughter supply is halted, their business model is disrupted. They must either source frozen pork, which may carry lower margins, raise prices, or close temporarily. As reported by Taipei Times, some stalls did in fact pause operations, while eateries that rely on freshly slaughtered pork for signature dishes like baoan in Changhua said they might have to temporarily shut their doors. Looking ahead, the pork industry in Taiwan faces pressure from multiple fronts: interruption of live pig supply, increased costs, such as if alternative feed must be used due to the kitchen waste ban, consumer caution, and regulatory uncertainty. For vendors, this means short-term losses. For consumers, possible higher pork prices or tighter selection. For the industry, a potential acceleration of consolidation, with smaller farms exiting, fewer but larger producers. And this is all already underway. The African swine fever outbreak in Taiwan is not merely a veterinary or biosecurity issue, it is already a market and social issue, affecting the everyday pork stall at the morning market, the shopping trolley of average consumers, and the livelihood of pig farmers and butchers. When you hear those airport warnings telling you not to bring pork into Taiwan, they might sound excessive or even annoying, but behind them lies a hard-earned truth. Once African swine fever enters a country, it's almost impossible to remove. Taiwan's first confirmed case in Taichung shows how even the most vigilant systems can fail if one small breach occurs. For Taiwan, the coming months will be critical. If no additional cases appear, the country could regain its ASF-free status. But the outbreak has already sparked national debate over food waste feeding, border inspections, and even potential biosecurity sabotage. Making it to the end of an episode makes you a Formosa Fauna friend. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time for Formosa Fauna Fridays here on Radio Taiwan International.